Greetings, my beautiful lovelies. It's Emmy. How are you? It's so good to see you and welcome back. Today's video is sponsored by Native, the makers of paraben, cruelty, animal, sulfate, aluminum-free deodorant that works. After a long day, after a long run, it still continues to work. So I myself don't have body odor, but my family does. So I really appreciate a product like Native that's made with natural and familiar ingredients like shea butter and coconut oil, but there are tons of scents to choose from and they're not heavily fragranced, which is another sensitivity that I have. You can even get unscented. My husband's favorite happens to be charcoal. My husband also tells me that the texture of Native is quite nice. It goes on nice and smoothly and it dries quickly. It doesn't feel too wet. And yeah, it works. That's what I appreciate most. 3 deodorants normally cost $36, but if you click the link down below and use my code EMMY2, you'll receive them for $24. That's 33% off, and that includes free shipping in the US. So big thanks to Native for sponsoring this video and for their continued support. So today I'm going to be making a recipe that is a personal throwback. Isn't it so interesting how recipes and food are so closely tied to our memories? I find that endlessly fascinating. At any rate, today I'm going to be making cheese zombies. Now I have to confess, I have not eaten very many cheese zombies in my life, but it just reminds me so much of high school. Let me step back a little bit and tell you, first of all, what a cheese zombie is. A cheese zombie is essentially a bun that's slightly sweet and it is filled with a molten hot processed cheese. You could buy these at the Quad in high school for, I believe, $1.35. I only purchased them, I think, twice in my entire life, but everyone bought them and everyone ate them, and they were called cheese zombies. So in high school, I wasn't a huge fan of cheese zombies, and I don't imagine that anything has changed since then, possibly. But the biggest reason why I'm making this is purely for nostalgic reasons. It's one of those things where you haven't heard about something in years, and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in forever. I want to revisit that. There are 2 origin stories. Some say that it originated in Washington. Others say it came from California in the East Bay, and they're slightly different. The Washington version is more of a pan-style bread with a layer of molten cheese in between, and they are cut into bars, and the California version are more like individual buns. Since that's what I'm familiar with, that's the recipe I'm going to make. So the recipe I'm going to be using today comes from noboneslife.com. I'll put the link down below, and it claims to be the original Mount Diablo school district recipe. So that sounds good to me. So let's go ahead and make some cheese zombies. This recipe has a lot of yeast. This is 3 tablespoons of dry active yeast. This is not instant yeast, this is dry active yeast, and it needs water to activate. So we're going to sprinkle it right on top of 2 cups of warm water. And we're going to let this proof for 5 minutes. In the bowl of my stand mixer here, I've got 5 cups of bread flour. Bread flour is different than all-purpose flour. It contains more protein and it will make more gluten. Gluten are the strands that combine together as we knead the bread, and that will give us more elastic, chewier dough and will give us a nice good rise. To that, we're going to add 3/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/3 cup of sugar. And I'm just going to give that a whisk. I'm going to fit my mixer with the dough hook attachment. So now we're going to add 1/4 cup of melted butter. This was melted, it solidified a bit, but we should be all right. On low speed, we're going to combine the wet to the dry, and then we're going to mix this on medium speed for 5 minutes or until it forms a nice dough ball. I'm wearing a Band-Aid, so for this kneading part, I'm going to also wear 1 glove. And we're going to incorporate 1 more cup of bread flour to this dough. Oh, it's very supple. Oh, why didn't you know? Inevitably, I always choose to wear dark color. Okay. This dough is very supple and very soft and quite easy to knead. So we're going to see how much flour this dough will take. It may not take all of the flour depending on the humidity of your area, so we'll just see how it goes or how wet the dough is. But we do want to knead it for enough time to develop enough gluten so that we have a chewy loaf and a nice rise. So after we knead it, we're going to shape it into a log and then cover it with a towel. and let it rest for 10 minutes. The dough has been resting for 10 minutes. And now we are going to make them into little rolls. So I've got 1 ounce blocks of Velveeta cheese. They're about 1 by 1 by 2 inches in size, or about 30 grams of processed cheese food. Recipe says to cut the log lengthwise in half. I'm going to cut that in half. And so each one of my dough balls end up working out to be about 112 grams. So I'm taking the dough and I'm tucking it under, kind of making a skin, pinching it under like this, and then sealing it and forming it into a ball. I'm going to make 6 cheese-filled ones, and then I'm going to make 6 just plain ones. You can fill these with whatever you like. You could add ham, you could add pepperoni, you could add mushrooms, onions. Apparently they still make cheese zombies, although I've heard the recipe has been changed a little bit to contain some wheat flour along with just the plain bread flour. Here are the plain buns. For the cheese zombie, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my brick of cheese, coax it into a ball a bit, and then I'm gonna place that in the middle of my dough, kind of like an egg. Then we're gonna pinch the dough around the cheese, just like a little parcel. Kind of looks like a little bow. Pinched it well, and then we're going to place it onto our tabletop, cup it, and shape it nice and round. Same thing with these. We're going to put it on a parchment-lined baking sheet, and I'm going to cover that with a towel and let that rise for about an hour. Alrighty, so now we're gonna pop these into a preheated 375-degree oven and bake for 15 minutes or until the buns are nice and golden. Alrighty, my lovelies, I have less than 1 minute left on my timer for my cheese zombies, and they look marvelous. Big and puffy and golden. I can't wait to crack one of these open and see the melty cheese inside. Okay, what do we got? 23 seconds. I finally got myself these gloves. They look like ordinary work gloves, but they are rated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, but I like the level of dexterity they give me. Oh, but hark! They look so good. Aren't they adorable? They're absolutely perfect. Look at them. Oh my goodness, cheese zombie time, cheese zombie time. Look at that. Beautiful. Oh, these are hot. Oh my gosh, look at that. Let's get this molten cheese shot, shall we? Wow. Did you see that? Cheese zombie time. Itadakimasu. That's a delicious, freshly baked bun. The bread is tender, just slightly sweet, soft, slightly crusty on the top. Can you hear that? And fluffy. So steamy and hot. The middle is like nacho cheese. It's molten, it's melty, it's kind of plasticky, smooth, creamy, kind of dairy, kind of like a cooked milk flavor, not really like cheese. It's definitely Velveeta. And it's still not my favorite. The buns are delicious. I think it's the cheese that I'm not a huge fan of. The texture is marvelous. It's homogeneous and smooth and plastic in that sense. It's the flavor I think that I don't really care for. It just doesn't really do it for me. And this tastes like I remember, although the ones at school were not quite as golden as these, I remember being a little bit paler in color. Thanks so much for joining me, and big thanks to Native for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to get 3 deodorants for $24, that's 33% off the retail price of $36 and free shipping in the US, click the link down below and use my code EMMY2. Alrighty, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you learned something. Please share this video with your friends. Follow me on social media, like this video, subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Toodaloo, take care, bye!
tea zombie time.